Welcome to the Faces of Leadership podcast, presented by Command Presence Training and hosted by CEO Michael Warren. At Command Presence, we believe leadership comes down to two things: people and action. In each episode, we sit down with leaders from across professions and communities who are stepping up, making a difference, and leading where they are with what they have. Together, we'll explore the lessons they've learned, the challenges they've faced, and the decisions that shape their leadership journey. Because the ultimate question isn't just what we can learn from them, it's what we can learn from each other, as we strive to become the leader we wish we had. Today, Michael is joined by Bob McHale and AJ Aldjaei for episode 26, Tools for Lifelong Learning.
Hey, welcome to the podcast, folks, and I hope that you enjoyed our last episode with Jeff Manzer. Jeff is a high-quality dude that is dedicated to the wellness of the people that serve in this noble profession. But this week, we have not one, but two guests. So let's go ahead and just do a quick intro of them, and then we'll get into the conversation. Our first guest is Bob McHale, who retired after 28 years with the Prince William County Police Department, where he served in a variety of roles, including those of supervising the evening shift. And folks, if you've been around any criminal justice agency, you know that the good stuff happens where? On afternoons and in the evenings. You're running and gunning, and he was supervising that. He also happened to serve as a staff instructor at the Northern Virginia Criminal Justice Academy. And most interesting to me, he actually helped to supervise the creation of Prince William County's Criminal Justice Academy. Folks, bringing into existence a new training academy is something that takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication. He retired as the director of that academy, and for the past 11 years, he's actually been serving as a field services representative for the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services, overseeing law enforcement, deputy sheriff, and jail training in the Northern Virginia and DC metro area. Now, a couple interesting things about his career. Number one, he is a graduate of the FBI NA Session 233. But for those of you who've been around long enough, and that's the people I like to call life experienced, he actually served as a scene supervisor for the Manassas homicide scene that was part of the Beltway snipers investigation. And folks, if you can remember back that terrible time in American history, the absolute fear and terror that was brought about by those events. So Bob's our first guest. Our second guest is a guy that I've become not only friends with, but he may object to that word friends, but he's somebody that I've come to admire because of his passion for what he does. But AJ Aldjaei actually earned a degree in computer engineering in 2012, and he attended Officer Candidate School, or OCS, as many of us call it, before beginning his career supporting the U.S. Navy as a civilian engineer. Now, I'm not going to bust on him because he was Navy, okay? I'm just saying at least he wasn't a Marine, okay? But he served in multiple roles as a flight test engineer, supporting the warfighter through the analysis and advancement of next-generation aviation systems. He later worked in the Pentagon across several organizations, ultimately supporting the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Folks, that's support at the highest level right there. But he eventually left, as often happens, and he started this organization called Kaiden AI, which is what we're going to be talking about. This is how we met right here. That serves as an AI-driven training system for law enforcement. Throughout his career, AJ has remained focused on supporting uniformed professionals, from military service members to modern law enforcement officers. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I was beginning to say, who were you talking about there?
Yeah,
But
but
an intro.
Hey, listen, when you write this stuff down, it starts to sound like we know what we're talking about a little bit, huh? So Bob, I'm going to start with you. And from reading your bio and from my conversations with you, it seems like you have a lifelong, I won't call it obsession, but certainly a focus on training. Would that be a correct characterization of you?
Yeah, obsession would be a good word. And it's probably why I'm still talking about it. and not on some mountain stream trout fishing right now, but
Hey,
that's another story.
It's one of those things that to me, and maybe your experience was different, but once it got in my blood, I was all in, man. I mean, I was like, this right here, what we can do if we do this well, what our people can do if we do the training component well, is unbelievable to me.
Yeah, and I was fortunate. I mean, I was in a well-resourced jurisdiction, an area in Northern Virginia. Until you leave that area, and I got to see the rest of the state in my role as DCGS field representative. We do audits in various academies. You saw academies that weren't as well resourced, that didn't have the driver training facilities and the farms facilities and the things that we had. So I didn't realize it at the time, but I was very fortunate to spend almost 3 decades doing what I did, where I did it.
I'm a firm believer, and we've mentioned it before on this podcast, that I believe that most of the ills, if we can use that word, as it relates to criminal justice, I believe can be addressed by two things: effective training and effective leadership. And effective training, in my belief, is one of the fundamental responsibilities of a leader.
Yeah, again, I worked for a chief, Charlie Dean, who most people's chiefs currently and those past would recognize. Charlie was a legend in the chief world, and he got it. He got the importance of training. When I was a staff instructor up in Northern Virginia Academy back in the late 80s, he'd be attending staff meetings. He'd stop in and say, "Hey, how's it going? Do you have the resources? How are we doing up here?" We were in a partnership at that time with that academy. He then had the vision to realize that, hey, we're getting big. We're outgrowing this facility. They were changing locations. He realized the new facility would be a hardship on officers attending training. So I always laugh, but he called me and he said, "Hey, Bob, I'm going to promote you to sergeant, and your job's going to be to start the academy." And I said, I joke with people and say, "Hey, Chief, can we just forget I had this conversation with you?" Because I knew, Mike, that my world was about the job. I mean, we had a building that was under construction, brand new facility, but and we had a core training unit. It did a lot of internal training. But the good news was they gave me, myself had to been there, done that at the academy, and 3 other guys that had to been there, done that were staff instructors. So we knew how to get folks from orientation day to graduation day. We knew the big thing was the culture. What do we want it to feel like? What, are we going to have a rat line in the hall and have everybody stand at the time? So that was the big thing. And I'm proud to say that, it's going strong to this day. Some of the things that we initiated back in 1994, if you can believe that, are still in use today. And I tell you, just one quick story. I had a buddy who was at DEA out in Camp Upshur, DEA's academy, right there in the Quantico area. And I had a great DT guy, a use of force guy, tremendous. And he had a lot of experience. And he said to me, "You got a buddy at DEA?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "They're using simunitions." I said, "What's a simunition?" He said, "It's like a paintball." I said, "Okay." He said, if we can borrow those, we're going to take our reality-based training to a new level. And I said, "Okay." So I went out and called this guy. And he said, "We can bring them, but we have to supervise it. We'll give you a tutorial on it. We'll give you a little class for your staff." And they came out. The then director, Dan Tabor, said, "I'm going to invite the chief. I want the chief to see this." So Charlie Dean came out. We're doing sims with the reality-based training. And the chief said, "You know what? I've got drug seizure money. How many of those guns do you need?" I said, "I don't know, 20, 25. He said, "You got it." So we got the guns, the equipment. In 1994, nobody was using sims in 1994. Nobody. And we never looked back. So leadership, vision, fantastic. Again, I was fortunate to be around it.
It's funny you should bring up simunitions because during my career, I went to both simunitions and to UTM's instructor course. Actually taught instructors for UTM, but Ken Murray, who's the driving force behind a lot of that technology right there, wrote the book "Training at the Speed of Life." Ken said that the training scars are the unintended consequences of well-intentioned trainers. And I kind of adopted that, kind of stole it, to be quite honest with you. And I said, well, leadership scars are the unintended consequences of well-intentioned leaders. And I think we have a lot of well-intentioned leaders that are trying to do very good training, but it's been kind of my experience that we either have basic education going on, or we have this almost too advanced stuff going on, and we're missing that middle piece in there. Where we start learning the application of the knowledge that has taken place. And so, when you're talking about basic academy training, it's certainly important. In fact, it's foundational to what's going on, but it can't end there.
Right.
It should be the start of a learning career. Just for my knowledge base, how did you end up coming to be involved? How did you meet AJ and his group? How did that come about?
Yeah. So they work out of an office not far from my residence. And there was another gentleman that I'd met, a guy by the name of Steve Gladys, who retired FBI, used to write the speeches for the FBI director, very prominent in the Bureau. And I'd see him on occasion. He did a lot of consulting work for us, and principally in police and leadership. And he sent me an email, or he called me. He said, "Hey, Bob," he said, "there's two guys I met that are working on something that I think has implications for police training." And Steve taught at Quantico for a while. And he said, "We used to use role players a lot." And he said, "I think this, might enhance the role play. It might take the place of role play. You should have a look at it." So I was close. I came by. AJ and Ali had a laptop in a conference room and explained this product as best they could. Said we created something. We think it has law enforcement implications. Proceeded to run a demo. It was a suspicious death scene. Ali was playing the role of an officer responding where someone had died. There was an argument, and he was going to interview some witnesses. And so I'm up at one end of the conference table. He's got a laptop that's facing away from me at the other end. And he starts a conversation with the laptop, like I'm talking to you now. And this person or this laptop's responding back to him. So I'm old enough to remember Candid Camera and a talking mailbox. So I thought, someone is playing a joke on me right now. This can't be real. And it was. And I immediately saw benefit to it. Again, like you said, I did two things: run the evening operation for a decade or more, and train cops, run field training. I just saw a benefit. Now, I said, I don't see this replacing role players immediately. You can't handcuff it. You can't, it's not defensive tactics. You're still going to have to do firearms. But what I saw it as is a repetition machine. So when I ran the academy, and it's still to this day, I oversaw it with DCJS. You get one shot at a traffic stop. All right, tomorrow's a traffic stop practical. All right, great job. You got a compliant driver. He has a license, registration. When I taught at the academy, we had 100 students. I had to run 105 traffic stops. So there isn't a whole lot of time to waste. And then next week is the landlord-tenant practical, and then the accident practical. So what I saw this is a repetition machine, also as a way to introduce recruits to scenario-based training. Like, hey, next week you have a domestic. We're going to give you some the ability to talk to a victim of domestic violence through Kaiden AI, and talk about protective orders and just build that confidence, build that knowledge base. So when they do that reality-based test, it runs a little smoother. They've already been there in their mind. We used to do that all the time, right? I mean, on the job. And then I saw use for it in field training, but that's how I met them. I won't go on and on too
What?
much about them.
Well, Bob, it sounds like your experience was very similar to mine because I actually met AJ through a mutual friend of ours, Wayne South. We were down at
Yeah.
the Southwest Virginia Regional Criminal Justice Academy, their executive retreat. And Wayne says, "Hey, man, I got to show you this stuff." And I'm going to be honest with you, Mike hadn't even opened Chat GPT up until that point. Okay, so,
Yeah.
so that was my interaction with AI was zero.
Right.
And then he brought me over, and AJ started walking me through this thing, and he started showing me, and they started talking about, hey, here's how we're using it in the basic police academy, and I mean, we're friends, so that's when the stalking began. I mean, just to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
So AJ, and both of you guys feel free to interject here, but AJ, what was it? Because I wish I thought like you did. That person that can see things in the future that do not yet exist, and then are able to figure out that pathway. What was it that made you say, you know what, law enforcement needs this tool?
Yeah. So I'd be lying to you if I said it was 100% vision into the future. I think there was a lot of things that happened that aligned, and luck was somewhat involved. Me and Ali, the co-founders, we come from an education background, so we had a similar startup, but in the education sector. So we built a teaching assistant at the time aimed at improving teachers' lives in the classroom and when they get home, when they do things like grading, create assignments, give feedback. And we had a lot of traction and success in that. And in that engagement, somebody came to us and said, hey, we're a pharmacy school. Our pharmacists or pharmacy students, they struggle with talking to the role-playing patients inside of the schools, so they need to practice. What can we do with this? So we looked into, all right, let's create this sort of sandbox environment where somebody comes in and they can have a conversation with an AI about a thing, whether it be the AI as a patient or otherwise. Bob mentioned Steve Gladys. Dr. Gladys took a look at it and he said, hey, this would be cool for interview and interrogation. The second he planted that thought in our heads, we spent 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, I told Dr. Gladys and I told my co-founder that I'm just about ready to receive a badge and a gun from how much I dived into the law enforcement space and learned a lot about their, day-to-day, the struggle of trying to keep up with ever-changing, tactics, rules, policies, laws. And when we saw that need, we said, all right, we have a basis for taking what we did in the education space, dedicate something to the law enforcement, but have a way to kind of have it be managed by the department rather than a one-on-one thing. So that's the story of how it came to be. A lot of it was, persistence. Luck played a factor, obviously, and it always does, I think, in a lot of ways. But also just the fact that you can see what all other products are doing out there, right? If from a business sense, if you look at everything in what law enforcement products are out there, they're heavy into operations. They're heavy into post-operation, right? Like, so your report writings, your investigations, and all these things, and hardware, your tasers, body cams, and whatnot. There's not a lot of stuff out there for the training part. And, like even in the when Bob mentioned Kaiden is a repetition tool, Navy pilots practice maneuvers on plane sticks, right? They literally carry sticks and say, all right, this is me. This is my wingman. We're going to do this. We're going to dive. We're going to pop back up. Then they go and do it in the sim, right? Like a flight simulator. Then they continuously do it. So the day of the mission, they're not thinking. they have visualized this maneuver or this flight the second they take off to the second they come back home. So cops didn't really have an environment to practice that outside of practicing their tactical skills like your firearms, but they don't have a place to practice the tool that they use the most, which is their voice.
All right, so I've got to build off a couple things you said there, if I could. Number one, and I think Bob, you would back me up on this. That when you do reality-based training, one of the most difficult parts to manage are the role players. They getting good role players is very difficult because I don't want somebody going off script, and I don't want someone overacting, but I also need it to be believable. And I think that your platform does such a good job of handling that complex piece for the trainer. The next thing I want to bring up is that I want to reiterate another thing that Bob said, and you also brought it up, was this shouldn't be an either or choice for trainers. This should be an and. It's just like, I shouldn't have to choose between a sidearm and a taser. It should be a taser and a sidearm are available to me as tools for when it's appropriate to use them. And that's the same thing with any type of training platform. And so the last thing I want to bring up here, way too much training, in my opinion, in law enforcement focuses on how to do things. Okay, here's how to reach down, grab your weapon, bring it up out of your holster, bring it up on target, squeeze the trigger and hit what you're aiming at. And there's not enough on when should I do that. And not only is there not enough on when should I do that, there's very little training on the aftermath. Now articulate to me why you did that. The articulation piece, from investigation to documenting reports, all that stuff is something that can be trained. And I think that yours is one of the best tools that I have ever seen in increasing the articulation skills of the people in this profession.
There's no question about it. And honestly, this started as a basic academy, repetition role player tool. But the most exciting to me is the other aspect of it, the policy operational tutor, which, as you were talking about, the articulation tool. So, okay, you used your taser, you decided to use the taser. Now, why did you do that? Or to stop the person midstream. Okay, you're talking about deadly force. What do you need to think about with that? There's nothing that does that. So, we're piloting this in Fairfax County in their field training program. Saw some pretty cool results as a pretty cool, getting good feedback as a result of it. My thing, and again, if my chief was here, we'd have a discussion on, wouldn't you want to know what your people don't know? I always, so, and people look at me and says, well, wouldn't you want to know if this guy doesn't have a good grip on probable cause or reasonable suspicion? If you're running a squad, wouldn't you want your squad members, wouldn't you potentially give them a scenario on this, a tutorial in a couple minutes, and get a check on whether people really understand? Our academy's up here 26 weeks at minimum. And these recruits are coming out, they're coming into field training. They're responsible for all the policies, procedures that their FTO is. And, the legal, they're overwhelmed. And I think we're losing a lot of people, both in the academy and in field training, because they're overwhelmed, because we're still teaching and testing the way we've always done it. We're not developing these tools that are now available, using these tools. And honestly, I firmly believe that you could retain more individuals through the use of a Kaiden AI, just giving them that confidence, right? I mean, the confidence, the knowledge is confidence. Just, hey, I can do this. I get it now. I see that, right? So it's portable. What I love about this tool, It's portable. It goes in the cruiser with you. If you have access to Wi-Fi or cellular on a laptop or a device, you could, you don't need a room. You don't need a simulator room. You don't need VR goggles. I can sit in a parking lot at 2:00 in the morning, and rather than make up something as a field training officer with my recruit, I can put them on this call. We haven't handled this yet. We may not handle this yet. Let's go through it now. The state of Virginia has over 100 criteria that FTOs are required to hit. And a lot of times it's just, hey, you know what the policy says on this? Okay, well, if you get a call like this is how you're supposed to handle, and it's more of a verbal back and forth as opposed to, let's go on that missing adult. Let's handle that missing juvenile. So that's it's a game changer to me, this whole technology.
Well, one of my favorite books is Telling Ain't Training. Okay. Policies tell you what you should do, but that's not training on how to do that. And so, AJ, I want to go back to ILEADA for just a second, because I sat in the session that you had there. And folks, I up until that moment, I kind of considered myself a Kaiden AI junkie. I thought I had a good grasp on what was possible. But then I had this device in front of me with AJ at the front, and I can still remember it was a breaking and entering scenario. And basically what it did was it gave the student the scenario. It told them what had happened. And it says, okay, based upon the information that you've been given, what crime do you have? And so AJ, playing the part of the student who's not sure, says, well, I believe what we have is a trespassing. But I loved how it responded, because the system responded, boy, I can understand how you might come to that conclusion, but during your thought process, did you consider these other factors here? And I watched this system walk it along the pathway of self-discovery. And the beautiful thing about it, AJ, was it didn't get upset with a student like I do sometimes.
Right.
It didn't become impatient. So oftentimes, because Bob, you talked about the number of people that you're training. AJ, I know it's being used in Southwest Virginia at their police academy, and they're running this thing constantly right here, and it becomes tiring for the instructor to be able to ensure that knowledge transfer is taking place. But this system allows, hey, I'm going to sub in for you. I'm going to tap in for you right now, instructor. And you also get, from a liability protection, you also get some backup material on the platform that shows that it actually did take place. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So the non-judgmental aspect of these trainers within the AI is really attractive. It's a safe space, right? We are building two things: a compliance platform in a safe to train space. So when you do make those errors, when you do flag some things that you should or shouldn't say, it doesn't treat you any differently, right? It tries to understand what you know. And that's the whole goal of these conversations is, I want to know what it is that you know. Why did you come to a conclusion? And what did or did not consider? As far as the compliance dashboard, or the legal kind of aspect to it that says, all right, you have some actual proof why somebody is ready or why somebody is not. One of the things that I don't think you've gotten a chance to see it. It's pretty hot off the press, is what we're calling it the officer dashboard. So we scan all the transcripts of all the conversations that they've had with the AI, and we take in external things like your daily observation reports, other recordings, and we analyze everything and tell you this individual is high performer, mid, low. This one needs more training. This one needs more training, but in a specific place. And this one's good to go, right? Top of the line, ready, hand him his badge and his gun, have him go off, and you'll be fine, right? You have low risk to worry about that individual. And all of that comes with evidence. The reason why this individual is ready, because in hour 6 of minute whatever, he said those things, which shows he clearly lacks the understanding of this policy or search and seizure rules, or he, in multiple instances, he did not have or establish probable cause. So Bob was a very big advocate when he continues to ask, when we go out to, conferences and events, he asks and he talks to a chief, how do you know what your people don't know? And this is kind of our answer to show a dashboard that shows clearly, here are your gaps, here are your high performers and low performers. And I know you can appreciate the fact that every organization in the world, if it's law enforcement or otherwise, right, just a business, you have high performers, your 9-to-5ers, and your low performers. That's not,
Yes.
officers aren't different. It's like any other job. It's like any other field, especially with a department with 1,000 plus. We try to improve everybody in the low performer and bring everyone up, but it takes time. It takes the resources. And I don't think there's a way for a chief or a city or a district to actually know and understand who are the folks that should be promoted, right? Who is my cream of the crop? The ones that should be in charge of people, the ones that should train, the ones that should lead. Who are the ones that are reliable? They can get the job done. And who are the ones that can put me at risk? I want to know those folks, and I want to mitigate it. I want to give them more training. I want to get them better at the things that they lack.
Just
That's our aim.
just thinking into the future of what I think is possible, it would also serves as a dashboard for if I start to see commonalities between trainees that have had the same FTO struggling in the same areas. Then maybe I don't have a student problem. Maybe I've got a trainer problem.
Training problem.
And it's not because, listen, there are most FTOs that I've dealt with, and I supervise my agency's FTO program. They really want to do a good job. But there are some people, just like it is in any classroom, in any training environment, that you just don't connect with. And if there's not a connection, that it has a detrimental impact on the training. But if I can start to identify not just problems with the people coming into the profession, but people that are training them, then I can address them. Because I want the early warning system. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is that I teach at the collegiate level. And the class that I just finished up, it has an assignment in there where every week is called Justify Your Decision. The system walks them through, and they have to make decisions based upon the lessons from the week. But it's not enough to do the right thing. You have to do the right thing and then be able to articulate why you did that. And I told the students, I said, listen, I don't care if you don't activate the video portion, but I need at least an audio recording of you justifying it, because there is something very revealing and very cleansing, in my opinion, about having to verbally articulate your justifications. Because there were several times that I could see the students kind of, they're justifying their decision. You see them kind of start looking kind of funny. You say, well, you know what? What about this? And it was an aha moment. And I think that's one of the things that yours provides, because you talked about safe space. Bob, I think you would agree with me that oftentimes training is some of the most unsafe spaces. Trainers often say, listen, if you're going to fail, I want you to fail where? I want you to fail in training. But then when they fail, we become frustrated with them. We start ridiculing them. Somebody I know may have signed somebody a nickname based upon their failure in training. So it's not really a safe space. And this provides that.
Yeah, I agree. It also records audibly what the person is saying. So again, in a field training environment or an academy environment, if you've got a recruit either sitting next to you or went on this AI, and they may say, hey, I didn't say that. I didn't say it that way. Well, you can go back and listen to the recording. So they can learn from it and realize that they did say it. Maybe, we need to say it a different way or learn from it. So there's just all kinds of learning going on at a much higher level with this tool than anything that I've ever seen.
So just to clarify, AJ, my belief is that you didn't develop this as a gotcha tool, where in training we can say, I got you. I got you. You said that wrong. It's literally designed for them to recognize their own mistakes after reviewing these things by getting the feedback, the criteria, so that they can learn and improve rather than saying, man, you really screwed that up.
Absolutely. One of the things that I always talk with Bob about is the contrast between law enforcement as a profession with things like the legal profession, right? Your lawyers, and the healthcare field. Cops take the least amount of training out of the, your lawyers and the healthcare field, even, not including doctors. If we talk even like nurses, nurse technicians, um, within a healthcare setting, their schooling is 2 to 4 years. And Bob just mentioned majority of academies in the US for law enforcement is between 20 to 26, 27 weeks, coupled with, anywhere from 16 to 8 weeks of field training, and that's it. The level of liability between law enforcement, legal, and healthcare is really similar. But the level of training that they get is very different. Lawyers can put people in jail or the death penalty, right, for years. Healthcare can kill people, and medical errors mount up, right? I think I read a report somewhere that the healthcare medical errors amount to about 100,000 people of deaths in the US, which is just an insane number. Granted, a lot of them are due to, some complications and things get on top. I'm not mentioning this to attack the healthcare community, but I'm showing the contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Cops have the ability to take a life or arrest somebody. Lawyers have the ability to detain and put people to death. So does the healthcare field. But the level of training is vastly different. Those are years, and cops are very little. And we need that because we need to keep our streets safe. We need to, we can't afford to have n number of years of training for those individuals. So we have to give some sort of platform for me as an individual officer to learn, what am I good or bad at? I can't be good at everything. I might be super empathetic, non-judgmental, and it would make me great on CIT calls and domestics versus somebody that's really tactical. I'm really good at, shootings or a chase or pursuit of some sort, right? Not every officer is good everywhere. So this tool was definitely developed in the sense of, we want to provide you a space where you understand, one, your own weaknesses, work to improve them, but mostly highlight where you're good. Because that always, when we say training, we try to find the bad. I also want to find the good. We've seen some officers in our partner agencies where they've shown a really, really, really good affinity to like de-escalate suicidals, right? I want to know those things. So as a department, I can take that individual when I have somebody that's suicidal. I know who to, who's my, major leagues to kind of go tackle that scenario.
Wait.
So that's the aim with this platform.
But you theoretically could use this as a tryout for certain positions, if you will. I know you guys have done some work with Doc Davis, our another mutual friend from ILETA down in Florida, on the hostage negotiations side of things. But how about we try to bring in people that already have an affinity for talking to people in those types of situations before we go and invest all that money in them at a negotiator school and find out they're not good at talking to people. I mean, you could use this tool as part of the tryout process.
Yeah, and one of the things in like a really specialized field like your hostage negotiations is their sub skills, right? Yes, hostage negotiators, generally, they can talk to people. Within it, there's these sub skills of just building rapport. Find me a role player that's willing to sit for 3 hours with me and talk about their life in general, right? Just whatever topic, just for me to learn, how do I build rapport? How do I build a rapport with somebody that is young, that is old, a male, a female, somebody of different race or ethnicity, somebody with different, medical or health conditions? all of these things, I don't know who are my hostage takers going to be. So I need to make sure that I have a method and a system in place to just build rapport. One of the other subspecialties and skills is identifying signs of distress in someone's voice or way of talking. If I start talking really fast or something like this, right, that shows maybe I'm agitated. So as the hostage negotiator, I need to train specifically on that one skill to pick up on these things. So it has place in these subspecialties within an overall specialty. And Bob's a really big advocate and was always a big advocate of the product being involved in the assessment centers and how it could benefit the promotions and assessment centers as a whole.
Well, I keep saying I'm really excited about this part right here. That's because there's a lot of things I'm excited about with the product. One of the things that I'm excited about is one of the fundamental duties of a leader is the willingness and the ability to have difficult conversations with somebody that they supervise that is struggling or is not performing well, or perhaps is performing really well in one area but not well in another. And I think that it's not just dealing with people externally that this can help you prepare for. It's also helping you deal with those people internally as well. Would you agree with that, Bob?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're fleshing that out like in the FTO's goals. So in our partnership with Fairfax County, as a matter of fact, at 12 o'clock, that's where I'm going to their academy to meet with their field training lieutenant. I think AJ is going to be there as well. And we are developing scenarios for his class in that recruit FTO. So this is a class for new field trainers and giving them the reps, if you will, on coaching performance. Hey, we're going to a shoplifting call. They got a juvenile in custody. How do you feel about that? What do you think in route to that? Right? What do you in those types of conversations, and then the AI. So I've set up a couple of these for this gentleman. He thinks it's crazy. The AI is the recruit talking back to the FTO that, well, I've never done anything like this in the academy. I don't know. What do you think I should focus on first? And then the new FTO is not, you see how he's going back and forth. So that's your supervisor / subordinate exercise. It's applicable to field training. It's applicable to a sergeant. It's applicable to any rank on the police department.
So another good friend of mine, Greg Williams from over at Arcadia Cognerati, one of the things that he emphasizes so much with his partner Brian Marin is that training should serve as a removal of novelty situations. That if we can use training to remove the novelty of situations, then we get better responses. And so one of the things that I love about this is the ability to go and use it as a testifying in court, where the student is sitting there in the witness stand and the system serves as the prosecutor or the defense attorney, whichever one. And listen, you could probably tell by looking at me, quick on my feet is not something that's ever been talked about, but we've got to be quick on our feet in our mind, right? And that ability to think critically and to shift and to see, they always say that the best chess players are the ones that can see the moves into the future, seeing where potentially this line of questioning's going. What is the trap that may be laid? Because testifying in court in front of a judge and in front of a jury is nerve-wracking the first few times that you do it. And it's hard to do it in an academy setting because you try to do the role playing, but you've got a lot of downtime for most of your people when you do that. This allows you, because everybody can be on it at one time, because it's not an app-based or a device-based, it's web-based. They can go and they can do this simultaneously, and you really can start to get a handling on who has a deep understanding of not only what they did, but why they did it.
Absolutely. And you talk about, preparation. We have a client up in Long Island, and I had an hour conversation with the supervisor, street supervisor, and his FTO, and they just love love the thing. I mean, they're a small agency. It's a force multiplier for smaller agencies, just like it would be for Tim Tester down in Southwest. And um, and so they talked about this officer who was all anxious because they had a hoarding situation in the village, and they were going to have to evict this person the next day. And he was coming to the sergeant saying, hey, I'm really nervous about this. I've never done this before. I know we have policies and procedures on it. So the sergeant said, let's do this. Let's set it up in Kaiden. Let's set up the scenario. Let's create. And that's the other beauty of this. We really talked about the ease of creating various situations. So they created the hoarding situation. It's their policies, their procedures. That's how Kaiden operates. You load in your policies, your procedures. And so it had the policies and procedures in there for this eviction, or that it would normally be a civil situation. Most police officers weren't involved in, but in its town they were. And he ran through it, and he said he felt so much better, right? And it went well the next day, very similar to what he had gained for. So just like court preparation, again, it's the ability to tailor. And one of the things we did in ILEADA was create the sovereign citizen. Somebody asked, create a sovereign citizen. So we created a sovereign citizen on the traffic stop. I mean, these are things that, again, I get excited about in FTO. You just, you got time. I mean, I know people are busy, but there are times during field training where it's slow, and you can, put a recruit on this. Your good FTOs are going to be even better with a tool like this. Never going to replace an FTO, in my opinion, but it makes them that much better, right? It really does.
I don't think it replaces, but I certainly think it strengthens and enhances that FTO, because again, AJ said it. Not everybody can be good at everything, right? There are going to be some areas that the FTO is not as good at as others, and this helps them out. So as we start to wrap things up here, fellas, I
One of
just want to
the
say, number one, I am so oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one of the primary functions of a field trainer is to instill the department culture, right? If I'm a young officer and I came to a state academy and I came back to my home department, it's not just about the field trainer teaching me how they do things from a tactical perspective of here is our policy, here is how we detain, here is how we question, but what is the culture of the organization? Seta mentioned that we come from the higher education space. Teachers often rely, especially in the K through 12 region, they spend a lot of time teaching the subjects, not the critical thinking part. Field trainers need to have the ability to focus more on the most important job, which is what is the department culture? What does it take for me to be a good officer? What are some stories that you've been in as a field trainer that shows how to avoid being a bad officer? And we see it that a lot of time, as the more you spend in a career, you get some signs of resentment, or I should have been promoted, I should have done this, right? Getting a really good field trainer in the first year or two of a career will have an impact that goes beyond that year, right? It'll stay with you till, the rest of your career. So we want to give the field trainers the ability to just focus on that, right? That's the really important part. Let something else like Kaiden or, anything else out there to help you with the tactical aspect of, we'll take care of policies. We will take care of giving them the way to practice on things like domestics and whatnot. You focus on the really important task. That's kind of one of the things I wanted to mention.
Yeah, focus on what does policy look like in action. What so you have a true understanding of commander's intent behind the policy. And you mentioned it earlier, and this will help us to wrap things up here. It's overwhelming the amount of things that our people are required to know. If we can get the articulation piece down, if we can have a deep understanding of what our legal authority is, and if I know what my legal authority is, then I'm likely to stay within my legal authority because I know what the boundaries are. It takes away a lot of that cognitive load that oftentimes detracts from critical thinking and adaptive decision making. One of my favorite movies is Top Gun Maverick. And there's a part there where Tom Cruise is telling the pilot, says, "Don't think, just do." And then Tom Cruise gets shot down, and then the pilot gets shot down. And he comes up, he goes, "What were you thinking?" And he goes, "You told me not to think." He goes, "Okay, you got me there." But the idea is to be able to get our people to do without having to cognitively think about it at the time. Not that they haven't thought about it before, because they've thought about it a lot using platforms like this right here. They just have to do at that point. And so, guys, I'm so excited about what you're doing, what you're bringing about for folks. So if somebody were looking for information about the product, where is the best place for them to get that information?
Our website gives a lot of information on what the product is, what are some of the use cases. There's a form that they fill out that will reach out to them, or if they have any questions, they can email me directly. It can be reached at founders@kaiden.ai. So, we're more than happy to just discuss AI in general or discuss training in general. We've seen a lot of studies and scenarios to assist a department outside of, hey, let's just, pitch you Kaiden. There's a lot of things that could be used that are, other products, free things that are available. And we give ours as a free trial as well. If a department wants to investigate it, I truly believe that the best way to sell Kaiden is to let people use it.
Yes.
We've had a very, very good success rate. So departments are, you can come in, use it, get your trial access. We have a couple of departments that use it on an actual trainee. So they have an FTO and an FTI and a trainee. And they both use the system together to track their training. And that was the use case they used to justify purchasing.
So, folks, I'll make sure that I include contact information in the show notes for the episode. So if somebody does have that question, obviously I'm a big fan. They can reach out to me. I don't know the specifics, but if you guys ever go on tour, I'd probably be a good roadie for you. As you can tell, I'm a big fan. But I do appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedule, the important work that you're doing to come and talk to us about this. And so for our folks that are watching or listening to this, thank you for joining us today. And as we close the episode out, as we end all our episodes, I encourage you to go out today and be the leader that you wish you had.
Thank you for joining us for the Faces of Leadership podcast, presented by Command Presence Training. A special thank you to the leaders who share their experiences and lessons with our audience. For more episodes, resources, and training opportunities, visit commandpresence.net. And remember, leadership is about people in action. Strive to be the leader you wish you had. We'll see you next time.